to episode 35 of the KNKL Show. My name is Kienan Lafferty, and I am your host today. We are going to be doing a tutorial today, the day after St. Paddy's Day, on how to lay the foundation of your drawing so you can build the house atop and have it be a sturdy structure. But before we get into that, I want to talk about a little something I like to call Wayna. So many of you have been asking that I talk about this lovely young lady here that is soon to be joining the Ligue de Leyendos. And yes, I just wanted to tell you guys that I am really looking forward to play this character. It is probably going to be my new support champion, so I can stop running Maokai bot all the time with heal and clarity, or heal and clairvoyance. And I can actually heal and support properly. So yeah, this was a lot of fun to do. She actually went through a lot of changes during her design process and just her character study thing, but this was the final look for her. So I hope you guys like it, and yeah, she'll be coming out here pretty soon. I think next week. So be ready for that. Moving on to the YouTube. As you can see up here, we are approaching 2,000 subscribers, and that is amazing. So thank you guys once again for telling your friends about the show, tuning in to watch it on the weekend, and yes, that is something that will not stop anytime soon. So moving on to the Facebook. Whoops, that's my Facebook. Moving on to the Facebook. Thank you guys so much for submitting the usual awesomeness of drawings. Look at that. Freaking awesome dynamics, proportion, and perspective. I love it. Oh, and the Maokai. You know how to make me smile, my friend. Thank you so much for that. So yes, thank you guys once again for submitting your awesome stuff to the Facebook. The Twitter. Thank you for those of you following so I can bug you when I'm filming and uploading the new episodes. And if you are not following me, then follow. With all that out of the way, we are going to be jumping into our tutorial. How to lay the foundation. And I always get this question a lot. Is how do you start your drawing? What resolution do you work at? How do you set up your brushes? So I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough of everything that I do to get started with a drawing. Checking the time, 2:08. Alright. This thing will conclude approximately at 2:28. Hopefully. That's what I'm going to be shooting for. So the first thing you're going to want to do. Open up Photoshop. Normally it can be found with an icon that has a PS on it, sometimes blue. Look for that. Once you double click that, it will open the window where you will go to File, New, and you will be prompted to enter the dimensions of your masterpiece. Usually I go 11 by 8.5 for the show, but the important thing is right here, resolution 300. That's basically going to affect the overall size. And 300 is just a good DPI for printing and whatnot. So that's the one I usually go with. Moving on! The first thing I do with the background is I hit Control U. And I like to take the lightness. That brings up the hue saturation thing. And I'll drop down the lightness to like a more, like a grayish. And what this does is it actually makes it a little easier on your eyes so they're not constantly like being exposed to this white light. So that's the first thing I do. Then I hit Control-Shift-N, which will bring up the new layer. I'll just call this Sketch. Sketch layer. Now moving on, we are about to begin actually drawing. We have laid down the cement and the rebar and all the stuff. Well, actually, no. We're actually still doing that. That is our foundation. We have dug the hole. We have dug the hole of dirt, and now we are ready to begin filling it with concrete. So, first thing you're going to want to do is grab your brush tool, and then right here, this icon is your brush properties. I'm going to show you the brush that I use probably about 99.9% of the time. So you go here, and when it stops lagging, come on. Come on. I think I know why it's lagging. It's probably because of this. Get that crap out of here. Alright. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go to Shape Dynamics. Size Jitter, you're going to hit Pen Pressure, okay? Then you go down to Other Dynamics. Opacity Jitter, also set that to Pen Pressure. Click on Smoothing, And then for each of these three things, I want you to hit this little lock thing. What that's going to do is no matter what brush you choose, it's still going to retain these properties. So yeah, yes, do that. Lock it. Lock them up. And then you will be good to go. So let us begin filling this hole in the ground with our concrete to begin building our foundation for our masterpiece. So today we are going to be working with probably just a simple mannequin character. We can turn it into something a little later. But let's say we want to draw a character in a running position. Now there's an easy way to do that, and there's a way to actually push the dynamics and the proportion of that, or the perspective, and I'll show you how to do that. So the first thing you're going to want to do, keep in mind, is your lines of action, right? So it's always good to have, just a couple really simple lines of action in your drawing to just kind of communicate, and those lines will still be very apparent in the end. So let's say we want to have a character running. Obviously we want to kick it off to a diagonal to kick it off balance. And then the second line that's going to be apparent is going to be this one here, the character's arms. So there you go. And then the head, obviously, going right about there. This is all very simple sketching, right? So you got those two lines there. Now it's time to start, the way I like to put it is exaggerating the angles. So kind of start playing around with what exactly is going to be happening with this arm. Kind of sketching some shapes here. And instead of this arm going straight out like that, what if we like heightened it? So it's like the shoulder is coming up here, and then the arm is going back like that. So that's a good way to show a little bit of exaggeration. Now you have a little bit more conflict because you look at how this line's coming here, and this line is coming here. And you just kind of think about that flow. It's almost like it's creating an arrow pointing this way. This way. So you got that. Always draw in, like you have your little egg shape for the head, right? Always draw in a little cross on it to show where the character is looking, right? Because depending on where the head is positioned, it's going to affect a lot of the emotion that's being felt. Like say if this character was running forward happily, you'd probably want to have more of their face turned upward like this, and then their eyes are like that, looking that way, and they're happy like that, right? But if they're angry, it's gonna look weird if they're like this. It's gonna look kind of funny. So a way to help push that emotion is actually to tilt the head downward. Now notice if we tilt the head downward like this, and then we put in that angry face. You see how that immediately, like it complements it like this. The ellipses of the head are complementing the downward angles of this angry face. So for this one, I think we'll stick with like a more determined kind of angry downward looking face. Go with that. Now next up, what we want to do is we want to think about where the chest is going to be, where the planes of the chest. And when in doubt, I always like to arch the chest or like kick the chest out instead of like doing this thing where it's like they're kind of like this. It makes them look more powerful when you kick the chest out. So I always like to kind of follow a line here, draw a line out like that, and think about the neck. The neck is coming down here. Here's the center point of our chest, right? And now we are going to talk about something that is very special to me. We're going to talk about country pasta. Country pasta is a delicious dish. And it also works very well in drawing. Country pasta makes everything better. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there's a term called contrapasta, which is varying up the plane of the chest and the hips. And if they are changed up in their angle, like notice the chest is, like if it was a box, it's going back this way. If you make the hips turned and the box of the hips is like going this way, Like imagine this is coming toward us like that. That is country pasta. And it's like it's adding a really cool twist to the body. And it makes it look more dynamic and cool and actiony. So I always try to throw a little bit of that into my drawings. It always makes your poses look better. So now you can see we're moving down from the chest. And also another thing, you notice how if we were to draw in the legs really quickly, like say he's running, right? Or girl or guy is running, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter yet. At this point we're still working with our stick man pretty much. So because this arm is forward here, we want this leg to be forward, you know, because that's how you run. Whatever arm is forward, the opposite leg is forward. And then this leg is going to be going back like this. And always remember, try to follow this line. Remember that initial line that we did, that diagonal line of action. You want to kind of reinforce that as much as possible to really kind of put your character off balance. And the way that I work with my lines, if you notice, I don't draw something and be like, oh, that didn't work, I'm going to redo that. I almost draw like these kind of like ambiguous shapes, right? And then if I want to shape it a little bit differently, I'll go in with the eraser and I'll actually I'll shave away, or I'll sculpt the edges of it, the silhouette, until it's to a point that I like. So let's say, okay, so we want this arm coming out forward like this, and that represents our fist. Notice how simple that was, just a box and a little circle there. That represents our fist. Yes. So that's looking pretty good. And always remember, like when we did that anatomy thing, there's always a little bit of that curve to the leg. Like from the hip, comes down like that, and then it hits the knee, right? Then it bends outward with that bone, and then it hits our foot. If you can keep that shape in your legs, it will keep them from looking like this, the knee, that, and then the foot. You know, it just looks so, there's no flow to it. And I do not like it. I do not like that, so stay away from that. Alrighty. So, now we've got a little bit of a flat pose for our friend here. Yes, it is running, but it is not dynamically running. So I'm going to show you how to simply change that up, make it look more dynamic in its angle and perspective. And it's actually quite easy. So the biggest thing that you want to consider while you're doing this is you want to consider the ellipses of your drawing and where it's going. And a lot of dynamics can be pushed with simply creating less space between the body parts. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. So say we want to kind of, right now it's straight up and down, and we want to do this. We want to tilt it forward, more like it's running at us. The first thing you're going to do is, you notice when I did that, what happened to my face? It went down. My head went down. So grab the head right there, lasso it, move it down, all right, like that. Bam, look at that. It's already done a lot. Now what that's doing is it's creating the illusion that these ellipses are going this way, and this way, and that way. Same thing. We're going to kick up the angle of the hips and the waist. So you grab the legs, move them up, right? Like that. And see what you're doing here is you're saying, okay, where those hips are, they're moving up to here. So before, look, they were there. All you've done is just grabbed them, moved them up. And look at how it creates that illusion that things are heading more towards you. And you can even take it a step further. Like, say you did that and you wanted to just, shrink them a little bit. I mean, sometimes that works too. Sometimes that helps. But most of the time you don't have to mess around with the size too much. But let's see how that looks. And then compare. I always like to kind of go back and forth and compare. Yeah, you know, I don't think that we really need to resize it at that point. So let's just move it. Keep it like that. Then I kind of just blend this line. You think of it as, here's the waist, right? Then beneath that, there's a shape. There's another shape of the hips. And you want to think in like 3D terms. Or 3D. You want to have a 3D mindset. Thinking about how it's like a tube, right? And like, if it's like this, it's straight up and down. But as it turns towards you, you see more of it, right? It's like more of a circle. And that's exactly what's happening here. We're seeing more of that, the circle within. Laying the pipe for our house. Oh, man, that's kind of a... Hopefully you guys don't know that euphemism, because that's very naughty. But anyway, yes, we are laying the rebar for our foundation. And you can see now we are approaching a much more dynamic feel. And again, let's even push this. Let's push this arm back in space. Let's say, actually, we can take our existing arm, grab that, hit Control T. Oh, and by the way that I'm resizing these is actually Control T. After you've selected it, you hit Control T, and it gives you this fine little box to mess around with things. And here's the cool thing. If you hold Control, you can select single points like this and adjust it. See how it kind of adjusts the perspective by itself? And you don't want to mess around with it too much, because it'll end up looking like you just kind of Photoshop warped it. But just a tiny bit can help quite a bit. And I would recommend just kind of playing around with that. Hitting Control, Alt, and Shift, I think all do different things when that tool is active. So yes, feel free to experiment. And notice the size. The sizes of this fist versus the size of this fist. You know? Everything, you want to think about everything kind of, what's the word, complementing each other and contrasting with each other. Something to compare to, a point of reference. That's what it is. So say you have this knee here, right? It's this small. You have this knee here, this massive box, right? And it's just that simple shape. But by contrast, you say, oh, that knee's close to us. And then this foot. When you're drawing this foot, this is something I always have trouble with. It's like, how do I know whether I want the foot to be, you know, here, or, you know, like the leg to be going out like that? But you can see why you wouldn't want the leg to be out like that, because nobody runs like that. Most of the time, the easiest thing to do is just play around with shapes. And the thing I find most simple to do is always kind of like, just think of how it flows. It's almost more important about how the shapes flow with each other, as opposed to being perfectly accurate. So you'll notice everything is really starting to complement and run with each other. Another thing is, okay, so watch, look at this hip here. Look at how it kind of pops out. This is more turning into a girl's hip. But that's good, because it's good for the example. Notice how this line comes down and it goes out like that. But this one, it goes down and kind of curves like that. That's also reinforcing our original diagonal line. You don't want it to come down and go out like that. Or do you? That looks a little weird. I guess it depends on the plane of the box beneath. But regardless, you really want to try to have as much of these straight lines going as possible on this side. And even the face, you know, even if you kick this, the line of the perspective on the face, it'll help it too. You reinforce that motion. Reinforcing the foundation. And that will make us all happy. Let's add that in. So now what you want to do is, oh, I want to actually kick back the perspective on this leg as well. So I'm going to grab this, hit Control T, hit Control on this point, and just kind of warp it a little bit, see what it does. Just a tiny bit. Yeah, that's looking pretty cool. I'm liking that. So now let's start adding some detail to it. Let's make this into a Disgaea warrior female. If we have time for that. Yes, we do. Yes, we always have time for that. So that's actually pretty easy, because all you got to do is Just throw some hair onto it, right? And then some belts. I don't know if any of you guys have played this guy, but it's actually really funny. The warrior females, all they have is just like some belts and then like leg armor. So they actually look pretty funny. Cool design though. I like them. Very, very simplistic. And I like simplistic things. So let's add that hair on. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. And then I think they have like little elf ears. Let's have those poking out there. Zoom into the face. Now again, we're going to have that angry looking face. So again, the downward angle is going to help reinforce that and make it look cooler. Do that little bandana thing. And then you notice, like, I'm not drawing over this. Eventually I will go in and I will darken all of these lines. So it's all just about kind of refining that sketch. So let's give her some angry eyes. There you go. And again, I'm thinking about the perspective on all of these too. There we go. Again, sculpting, sculpting. Look at the sculpture. Watch me as I sculpt. Bam. All right, moving on. So we got that done, that done. And this will also help reinforce our ellipses that we are studying. The neck is going to be kind of like, think of the collarbone as also, there's a shape here too. See that shape? The ellipse is turned toward us, so we're seeing more of it. And that ellipse is actually going to be the belt that wraps around her chest. That's all they wear. They just wear a belt thingy. It's awesome. It's awesome. Oh, by the way, when I'm drawing, I do hum, by the way, at work. People totally get pissed off about that. Or they start humming along with me, and I really like that. So there we go. There's our belt. Think about how it wraps around. It doesn't just go flat, because it'll wrap around, go under that armpit, like that. And then because of our muscle tutorial, we know a little bit about how muscles work. We have the shoulder, obviously. The bicep comes out of it like that. And then we have the tricep coming from behind, like that. And the warriors actually have a little bit of muscle definition. That's why I like them. Kind of like tough girls. And we all like that. There we go. Again, look at how I'm sculpting everything. And you can see how the drawing is starting to take shape underneath it. Yes, yes. Moving down. It's got like these little... Okay, remember, we got this line here, right? But because the chest is pointing this way, right? Remember, because of our country pasta, we have the hips pointing this way. So always remember that line coming here goes down. The belly button would be kind of around there. And this line signifies kind of the rib cage. I usually just draw one of them just to kind of suggest that. Again, it's all about minor details. Now we're moving into the hips. Do this thing. Again, remember that shape underneath, right? And she wears like these little biker short looking things. So I'll draw those on really quick. I also shade in my lines too sometimes, just to kind of remember what kind of materials I'm working with. And actually, I want to push that even further, that ellipse. Push it even further. There we go. Much better, much better. And again, sculpting. Look at how I sculpt the edges. Look at how I sculpt. Sculpting edges, sculpting edges. There we go. Anything that helps push our hips more this way. Okay, yeah, there we go. And then lastly, she has like these leg armor things, but yeah, I'll just kind of sketch those in. They're really, really blocky. Really, really blocky things. And this is interesting. This brings up another good point. When you draw characters with armor and things on them and all that stuff, whatever shape it makes, you always want to make sure that, because notice how it's changing the silhouette. It's no longer a straight line. It's coming out like this. It's creating all these big shapes on the outside, right? But what you want to make sure is always happening is that your character retains a clear silhouette, a very, very clear silhouette. Because once you start overlapping and start creating shapes, like say I drew this thing over here, right? Like say it was that big and it kind of collided with this leg. Notice how when you squint your eyes, this whole shape becomes very ambiguous. But because of the way that we laid it out, you can still see that there's a line, there's space here, right? So we can still distinguish that this is the leg. You know, we got this thing going on here. And yeah, so always remember to keep the silhouette of your character as clear as possible. And you will live long and prosper in the land. Yes, yes. Well, let's see. How do I want this foot to look? Probably just keep it an ambiguous shape. Again, that's the other thing, is shapes can tell so much about, it's not even so much about the lines. You notice how like this foot, why does that read as a foot? Because the shape's proper. Like you could make the foot go out like that, you know, like you just draw some weird foot, but that looks weird, you know? When you're running, and especially like when you're right at that moment where your foot leaves the ground, it's pointing downward, right? And again, it's reinforcing that line that we created from the beginning. So yes, always keep in mind that. Keep in mind that. Keep that in mind. Yes, I like it. So what this basically all boils down to is how important it is to lay down that proper foundation for your drawing, because if you don't, the rest of your drawing, even no matter how much you finish it, how much detail you put into it, it will still show a weak foundation underneath, and we don't want that. Meanwhile, if you lay a proper foundation for your drawing, you actually don't need to put that much detail into it to make it look good, because it will look right even from the beginning. If it looks right at the line stage, the colors and all the detail in the world will only just add to it. It'll only add to it and make it look even better. So yes, let's get rid of all these extra lines. I'll just show you once more all of the flow that's happening through this drawing. Okay, so now we have our running warrior chick from Disgaea. Let's just grab a red brush, create a new layer over top of it. And again, remember when I was talking about eventually I will take the lightness of the picture and darken it, right? Or take the sketch and darken it. I hit Control U again, the same way we darkened the background in the beginning, and I'll take the lightness bar and I'll kick it down like this. And notice how that immediately kicks everything down to black. And then I'll go back in and refine it more and everything. But the reason, another reason why I work with like a lighter color is just because it's softer. It's easier, it's more malleable. It's more malleable and makes it easier to work with. So yes, I suggest that you do that as well. So, let us talk once more. Final review of everything that is happening in this picture. Remember, in the beginning, we laid down the original action lines. One was like this, the other one was like that, right? The other one was like that. And then we exaggerated it to come up like that, and then we kicked this arm up a little bit more. Originally, the head was up here, but then we moved it down here. And we also did the same thing with the hips and the ellipses. We moved those up to simulate what's happening when you turn a body towards you. All the shapes come closer together. You see more of the ellipses looking at you. And then, on top of that, we made sure to keep a clean silhouette. If you squint your eyes and think of the shape behind it, you can clearly see what's happening here, here. There is space between here, so we can see that there's two legs happening there properly. The curve here goes up, and you can see how like everything flows. Everything flows and complements each other in a good foundation. You look at all these lines. There's no like real jerky movements. You know, it's not like, I don't know. It's the only way I can explain it, is it must flow well. A good drawing must flow well. So yes, I believe that will conclude our tutorial on how to lay the foundation for a proper drawing, and hopefully that helps you guys out with how to get started with your canvas, start laying down lines and kind of get an idea out and onto the canvas so you can begin painting and making your masterpiece. So with that, we will conclude the episode. It has been my pleasure joining you once again this Saturday, March 18th, the day after St. Paddy's Day. Hope you guys had a great time. And I will... Oh, is that it? Yeah. Sorry, we're not going to be able to do a question of the week because this is basically it. The question of the week was, can you show me how to get started? So it's a very, very long question of the week episode. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thumbs up if you like it. Thumbs down if you don't. I'm Kienan Lafferty, and I will see you guys next week.